Be advised that proper notice has been given by the Township Council in accordance with the Sunshine Law in the following manner. Notice advertised in the Burlington County Times and Camden Carrier Post on January 4th, 2019, and posted on the bulletin board on the same date. Mr. Lyon?
Here.
Mr. Armando?
Here.
Ms. Correa?
Here.
Mr. Burrell?
Here.
Mr. Ketchum?
Here. Not quite as loud as Tom, but so we have a couple of action items. First of which being resolutions. First is Resolution 2019-66. This is a resolution ratifying the contract between the Delran Patrolmen's Association and the Township of Delran.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Armando?
Aye.
Ms. Correa?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye.
Mr. Ketchum?
Aye. Next, we need a resolution. I need a motion to approve Resolution 2019-67. This is authorizing executive session to discuss a personnel issue.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Armando?
Aye.
Ms. Correa?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye.
Mr. Ketchum?
Aye. Next, we have motion granting 3 mercantile licenses. They would be Maha Enterprise LLC, 207A-14 Carriage Lane, Keystone Auto Group, 209-3 Carriage Lane, and Good Mix Auto Group Corp., 209A-5 Carriage Lane.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Armando?
Aye.
Ms. Correa?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye.
Mr. Ketchum?
Aye. Next, we have, I need a motion authorizing the re-advertisement of bids for the towing, recovery, and storage services contract.
Motion. Second.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Armando?
Aye.
Ms. Correa?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye.
Mr. Ketchum?
Aye. And I need a motion authorizing the payment of bills, including all purchases made under the cooperative purchasing agreement.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Armando?
Aye.
Ms. Correa?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye.
Mr. Ketchum?
Aye. You'll notice that we're going to be doing that on some work sessions because of the new rules for appropriate timing for getting bills paid. The excuse of, well, we don't have a meeting between now and then is apparently no longer valid. So we're paying the bills quicker. Don't smile. All right, so we have a couple of things on the work session agenda prior to our second and final review of the budget. And they would be, first of all, being a hardship waiver at 119 Natalie Road. You know, we typically get these requests for a waiver. We've granted them in the past when folks are unable to sell an affordable house. Jeff, do you want to give us any additional background on this? We've read the letter.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what's in the letter is it's been marketed for the appropriate amount of time for low-income individuals. They have found no buyers. Therefore, you have 3 options. One is to purchase the unit. The second one is to identify an income-eligible household. And the third is to waive the right to purchase. I don't believe you want to purchase this property.
I don't believe so.
We don't have individuals that have come to us that we can identify that are appropriate. Therefore, we would waive the right to purchase. The hardship waiver will be issued to the seller, and then the restrictions still will be on the property going forward. But that's essentially it. We've had a number of these.
We've done this before. I wanted to just ask one of the two of you to refresh my memory. So we're allowing it to be sold to a market buyer, but still at the affordable price, or it's the other way around? In other words, what I'm trying to say is, how do we? So we're saying this is that we're giving them a hardship waiver to sell it as
That person
what?
doesn't have to be income qualified.
Okay.
To purchase it. However, the deed restriction will remain on the deed, although, to be honest with you, these deed restrictions, no, they're starting to get close to running out.
Right. So, you know, maybe we should think about, I think we were all surprised to see the numbers of what constitutes low to moderate income in Burlington County. And I think there'd be a lot of people who would be surprised to know that they qualify for some of these homes. that we have, we know are vacant. So maybe maybe we can do some sort of a, I don't know, what I want to say is educational program to say, hey, you might want to, if you're looking to buy a home, you might want to consider if your income is at this level.
We have an inventory, right?
Yeah, we have an inventory of them. Maybe we do a little website, Facebook kind of, they're here, they're affordable, they're in Delran, you get all the stuff that everybody gets. You might qualify if your income is this, and people, I was frankly shocked when I saw what is considered moderate income. Was, had it not been for a career change, I would qualify for that, for some of the moderate income with having 2 kids living at home, and it's something that I think we should do. I think if we have this inventory, we should let people know that they qualify for it,
We haven't done it before in terms of putting things on the website, but we can certainly do it again. It's probably been a little while.
Yeah.
Most of the ones that are going begging are the low, they're not the moderates.
Oh.
Most of them are the low.
Right.
But
And that, we all recognize that's tougher to qualify for, and, if you're in that,
yeah, we can put something together and put that on the website.
yeah, okay.
Because we actually own 3 of them that continue to cost us money.
Yeah.
So paying for condo services, things along those lines that we've put on the website a number of times, and the housing affordable service is also advertised, but we may want to think down the road about trying another way to market it, including a broker.
Yeah.
And paying a commission, because it's just not getting the thing moved.
Yeah, I think if it's lack of communicating that to the people who might be eligible for that just don't know that they're here or that they qualify, I think that would be a great opportunity to get the houses filled with people, and get the people who need houses that didn't know they qualified and maybe can't afford a fair market home, they could get in them. That's just my thought for the day. So, does anybody have a question about granting this hardship waiver?
No.
Okay, so what do we need, just a
Essentially, if you
motion?
don't do anything, it's waived. I mean, you've granted the hardship. If you want to make a motion specifically to it, you can go ahead.
Should we do that?
I concur with that.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do legal work.
Okay. So, I need a motion to grant a hardship waiver for 119 Natalie Road, Delran.
So moved. Second.
And you do this voice vote, okay?
Voice vote is fine.
Voice vote, fine. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, it's parade time again, so we're all gonna be dropping a few pounds to fit into our Delran shirts. So this is something that we've typically done over the last 19 years. If you'd like to participate, it's a great thing to show our support to both Riverside, and we have quite a few Delran organizations involved, as well as obviously EMS, police, fire. And it's great to be, since we don't have a Main Street, we kind of steal the use of their Main Street for we have a Main Street, it's just not a Main Street. If anybody, so what, we have to respond and let them know. Typically, Jamie is nice enough to let them know if we'll be participating. I typically do, Tyler typically does. Virginia, you'll be walking this year? You know, Michael?
Yes.
Thomas?
I may be out of town,
Okay, enjoying the long weekend?
doing whatever my wife says, yes.
You're smart. So we march in the parade. I don't think we will be doing anything, and we will be providing a wreath for the memorial. So will you give them and tell them it'll be 4 or 5 of us,
Okay.
barring any changes. Then I appreciate that. Okay. Next is so next we have the discussion of the appointment of a COA attorney and planner. Jeff sent out something today, was that?
Yeah.
And got it in my hand. But I don't have it. Very good. Maybe I do have it. I have it. It's here somewhere. I just left it. So anyway, by way of the, do you want me to do this? Or you want to do this?
You do.
Okay. So we have two things. One is the engineer, or co-engineer, or co-planner. We had one submission, and that was CME Associates, who, frankly, Mika and CME served in that role for the last several years, and were there all along, were incredibly helpful to me as we negotiated this settlement. So this one's an easy one. We can do that. I think they're both easy, but here it is. I knew I had it. So, unless somebody is not happy with their proposal, I think that CME is who we need to go with for the COA planner. And as the responses came back for the COA solicitors, I think the biggest factor here, they all seem to be qualified. We didn't find anybody that was not qualified, as I recall. And the fact that the council that was in place doing the COA work is up to speed. My biggest concern is if we have to pay someone to get up to speed, what's that going to cost us? And this is not an accurate mathematical assessment, but we're 90% down the road of this settlement. It doesn't make sense to me to pay someone else to do that, to get up to speed, and then do very little of what's left. Does that assessment make sense it makes sense from a governmental perspective, from a legal perspective, to pay a firm that would be new to the situation to get up to speed, not have that situational fluency as to exactly what we're talking about. And then we've already spent the money, and then whatever work we have to do, we have to pay on top of that. I'm thinking, while they're not the lowest bidder, I don't think do we have a restriction to be lowest bidder for professional services? They're certainly qualified. They worked with us to be the attorneys during the whole COA litigation. We got through that, survived that, I think, pretty well. So we have, I'm looking at our not our solicitor, but our councilman who's an attorney, and he looks deep in thought. Do you have any questions, sir?
No, I mean, I looked at the value of each of the applicants, for lack of a better term. I agree that although their bid is not the lowest, if there is a significant portion, and it's hard to know what that portion would be for any law firm to come in, even the savings you might realize on an hourly analysis, you might lose if there's a significant portion of time to catch up to speed. So, I mean, if you look at the 150 for Grace, Mormauer and Associates compared to the lowest one, which is 130, it's a $20 difference per hour. But you may end up more for Bernstein's firm to catch up to speed. And as it indicated, before even my time, this has been going on for quite some time. And I know that firm with Mr. Schatz, I think it was up to his elbows in the case, and
Yeah.
from what has been represented to me, he's very familiar with the situation. So, I mean, I don't object if that's where the council wants to go.
Right. So we've settled the suit. There are some non-legal descriptions, some housekeeping issues that we see trickling in on occasion. I don't see anything. I mean, is there anything major we need to be concerned about?
Legally, obviously, I'm not familiar with the file as we aren't co-solicitor.
Right.
But all of the policy considerations that have been expressed by you and Councilman Armando are all valid considerations. And as far as I've seen, and as far as I'm concerned, there isn't a legal obstacle to reappointing Mr. Schatz's firm to proceed forward with finalizing and tying up any loose ends. And as noted by Councilwoman Amanda, there's a time value aspect there, which can't quite be quantified, but which we know there is value in the fact that he is already familiar with the file, just based on my personal experience and practice. So.
Right, and having been in the trenches with that negotiation, you know, I know that he is fully aware of all the ins and outs of the case and what their implications are and were when we were doing the negotiation. I don't know how you read that on a page. I'm sure you can, if you were the COA solicitor, but I think that, you know, we're so close to the end here that I just think it's prudent to go. Anybody else have any comments?
I just happened to, me and another, in my day job, where they removed the solicitor, and they were 70–80% through negotiations with a bunch of units, including ours.
Right.
And they retained the old attorney to finish up the negotiations just because they were so close.
Yeah.
Just say, you know, because to start over and catch the other one up to speed, there is a cost there, so.
Yeah. And we're beyond the negotiations. We've settled the suit. Now it's just, and I'm not an attorney, but we've got plenty of them here. So I'm thinking, you know, I don't know what more there is to do. I'm sure there's always going to be something else to do and file and stay on top of.
You have a hearing in May that essentially that's what you're hiring this firm is to get you to that hearing in May. You know, I've talked to Stuart, our current attorney, and at some point it will make sense probably to transition this back to your township solicitor. But in speaking with him, he didn't feel the time would be right until you went through that May, because he would have the same issue. I mean, his firm has done PREWA work as well, is that it wouldn't be prudent to do that until he was through that May hearing. At that point, then you can look at where you're at, because at that point, then it's executing the final plan.
Right.
That makes even more sense to me then, Jeff, if rather than get a third person involved for what could end up being a higher cost. I can't quite tell, but it might just be, when we're going to be transitioning to solicitor anyway, eventually. If that's the plan, that makes even more sense.
Well, it would ultimately be up to the mayor and yourself, but I think that's ultimately what would make sense. Because his firm has had work in the COA area, it's just that it doesn't seem to make sense to, and even talking with them, to hand it off right at the last, the last inning of a baseball game.
And we did not submit a bid package.
I did notice that. So what is the procedure at this point? How does this get
to
made?
resolutions at the public meeting authorizing
To make the appointment?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, Jeff, please, you're doing a great job. I only respond because council.
You get my bill.
Council President looks at me.
Don't bill me for the mistakes. I won't bill for the mistakes I make.
So
Practicing without a license.
are we okay to put this on as who we want to appoint?
Yeah.
Yeah, seeing nodding heads all the way around, I'm going to ask Jamie to put that on the agenda. Alrighty, sports fans, here we go. Jeff, as you always kind of lead the pack here, and I didn't see any major, you did send the sheet over, and was that just I'm not sure I saw it in my travels. Any major changes that I might have missed? I just want to make sure.
I'm sorry, there's not any major changes. We did, at the last meeting, discuss some issues that we were going to make some transitions where assign some of the cost of salaries to the sewer department, or the sewer utility that various employees work on, that would reduce it. And we made those changes. In addition, there has been, we've discussed with respect to sewer, there is a $800,000, I think, ban that will pay off. We're recommending paying off that in cash, since we have the cash surplus. All the other borrowings we've done with the sewer has been through what was the NJIT, which is now the Infrastructure Bank, which is at very low interest rates, and so we'll continue to have those. So we're looking at maybe increasing the R&R, which are projects that come up during the course of the year with a little bit of money, so that if we have, really we've done a lot of work on pump stations, but one of the issues is pump stations go bad. We're going to put a little more money in. That doesn't impact the sewer rate at all. The money will be there. If it doesn't get utilized, then it gets lapsed to surplus. Those are essentially the big issues. With respects to the municipal budget, if you left it the way it is, last year's revenues essentially and this year's expenditures, and there was one drop in one revenue, and that accounts for some of the increase, you'd have to be at 3.8 cents if you stayed where you're at, but obviously you had a pretty decent year with respect to operations, and so your fund balance is roughly at 9.2 million. And so it's really a matter of, at this point, determining how much more of the fund balance you want to use this year versus what you used last year to either leave the tax rate where it's at or to decrease. And as we outlined last session, it's still up on the board.
Still up.
It's essentially $141,000 for each penny that you want to reduce.
I had it in made a note, I folded it over, I can't find it now. There was a line item that I talked to Jeff about earlier with the REC. Where is that? Is that
It's
in?
It's both in the REC and it's in the Recreation Department head request.
It's in the agenda, I think.
In your packet.
Oh.
It says salary for chairman.
You're talking about salary?
Yeah, it's in
Salary for
the-
chairman, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a request for
that's
salary.
in, so, that's in recreation.
Correct.
So, I just wanted, we just have a request on the recreation tab.
Recreation tab.
So,
I thought you had it here. Out of here.
my concern with this is that none of the other boards that have chairmen, like planning or zoning, have a stipend for a chairman's stipend or salary or whatever this would be called. And I have some concerns about that. I think it's a bit of a dangerous precedent. On the same token, I know that with the new minimum wage laws, that we have to be careful with the summer camp. Those are all kind of minimum wage jobs.
For the most part, yeah, the youth are all minimum wage.
So I think we need to have some consideration for that. You know, I don't want to undershoot that number. And you have a better, I'm assuming that a good chunk of the salary, the 7,500 that was appropriated last year, was that a good chunk of that?
Yeah, the 7,500 was all the director of the summer camp and then all of the summer helpers.
Right.
And the difference between what was requested and the mayor's recommendation was the salary for the recreation, the chairman of the recreation that was submitted.
And what's the number that the chairman wants?
Well, I don't think he identified a number. I think that
Yeah, that's what I'm confused.
it was roughly 7,500 is what was put in here. An additional 7,500.
And that's, you said that, Gary, that's cushion for the minimum wage, and then the remaining balance of that would go to the chairman? Is that?
Well,
Or is there not a particular?
there's a cushion for the minimum wage, and I think, that we
Yeah.
don't know how many hours it's gonna be. I'm thinking that should probably be safe at $1,000. And the remainder was, while not identified as a salary, I don't think, and we would have to still do a salary ordinance for that. I just don't know whether we want to put that in the budget and set that precedent that the money's there for a stipend for that chairman. And let me just say that the chairman, it does yeoman's work. He works as hard as, you know, any of the volunteers do. I just don't know whether we should go down that path where we're starting to stipend volunteer board chairman. I think it's a slippery slope.
Since the mayor's not here, I could just to explain his rationale was that the chairman schedules all the fields for the various athletic programs and has taken on more items with, I guess, some of the activities that have been going on in the township. So that was the recommendation. There was a request and he had put it in there.
Yeah, but it's a volunteer position? Is that
It's been a volunteer position.
I mean, one of the issues, I think, if you don't bifurcate the two, I mean, you have people on the RIC who are volunteer, you know, and they do a fair amount of work as well. I just, you know, I don't want to kill the morale of a group by paying one individual and not paying the rest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a citizens volunteer
Yeah, I mean,
group.
it just,
And
we have hard enough time as it is maintaining people and volunteers, so.
what is the, so was the additional work in the field permits? I mean, is that what was the kind of the linchpin for this, or was it just kind of a, I know that.
I think it was both.
So, you know, the RIC has really stepped up in the last couple of years, and I think we're all proud of the work that they've done, and people are encouraged by that, the residents. I just have I don't know, I'm just not comfortable with paying a chairman of a volunteer board when none of the other chairmen for volunteer boards get paid, and the people on the same board don't get paid. So, you know, they can't get paid.
Sure they can.
Who's that?
I don't think planning and zoning board members.
Right.
This isn't the first time it came up. It came up a number of years ago with one of the chairmen of the REC.
And it's, you know, so are the field permits and then all the other, you know, I don't know, I'm not in there in those meetings, but my guess is that the REC with some of the events, the Delran Night Out and the Winter Festival, that there's, you know, everybody's pulling in the same direction and doing what they're doing, and that the chairman has the responsibility of monitoring, I would assume, the budget and issuing these field permits, and I know that that's a lot of extra work, and I just don't know, is there a resolution to this that would be to separate that out, or, you know, make that not necessarily a responsibility, and if that was, then who would do that? And do we have any staffing that's assigned to help with that?
We have a secretary to the RAC that helps.
That helps. I know that the RAC chair has to sign them all. But I honestly am not as familiar as I could be, because we don't have to be that familiar with how it happens. It seems like people are on the fields and they use the fields, and until somebody really complains about something, in my mind, that means that it's going okay. If it is, I mean, I don't know how it's managed. I don't know if this is something that can't be, is too much to manage going forward, or too much to manage for free going forward. I just don't know. You know, anybody have any input? I'm looking for ideas and suggestions.
Well, I think it would be helpful to know exactly how that money is allocated. I mean, we don't really have a sense of, like, for instance, breaking it down in hours. How many hours does it take to do those things? How labor intensive is it? Is it something that could be absorbed by another entity rather than the individual who's requesting the money? And there's so many questions that I would have about expending the money that I have to weigh against, you know, why are we not giving that same money to another chair of some kind who's doing the volunteer work for free, for volunteering? And then when we compare it relatively to a lot of other positions that you might even be making far less than what's requested, it's hard to justify.
Yeah. So I agree that, you know, that present company included, you know, at our whopping 22, what do we get, $2,200? $2,200 a year. I just don't know. This is a weird circumstance, and I don't know whether if we wouldn't be spending the money until we did a salary ordinance, but we would be taxing on that money, regardless of if we did a salary ordinance. So I don't know. I'm trying to read your faces, and you're not helping me. You know, I say we add $1,000 to the line item to cover it for the minimum wage increase, and stay with it there. And if there's discussion that needs to be had, then we do that. You know, subsequent, and maybe we reconsider it for next year. What, anybody?
I mean, that sounds, because the minimum wage is going up proportionally as we get to 2024.
Right.
So we do have a cushion. It's going to start going up $1 a year soon enough until we get to the 15.
So what are we paying now? What are we paying them now for the summer camp help?
Sorry, put you like 8 something.
Well, so it's going to be, you know, even though it's almost double. You know, that's another $7 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, this is going to have to grow even more. But if we do it incrementally, at least $1,000 will cover it, I think, for this year, unless we need more than that. I don't know, Jeff, you'd be there. No, we'd be okay with $1,000 for that. And then I really need to come to grips with why one volunteer chairman gets paid and none of the others do. You know, if it's a lot of work and we need to separate that out, or split that out for something. I don't know what the answer is yet, but
Council President, may be necessary based on the way the code reads right now. If it's explicitly defined as a volunteer position, in addition to the salary ordinance, to amend the code as well. But we'd have to evaluate that when we cross that, if and when we cross that bridge.
yeah, I don't know if it explicitly says that it's a volunteer position, but it probably says citizens-based.
It says it's an advisory committee to the mayor, so I don't know. It's a weird statute.
Yeah. So do we want to do that, or anybody have a different suggestion? I'm open for suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, unless we have more information about potentially bifurcating it, right, where, I mean, if we know how many hours this takes, and it's a substantial amount, that we should provide a stipend for someone who manages the fields. I don't personally have much objection with that, but the issue is, you know, when you're paying the chairman by himself for his work on the RAC, that's, you just have the floodgates that Mike mentioned.
Yeah, I just don't, I agree with your morale concern, and, you know, while they're not an advisory, you know, we have the president of the Historical Society whose eyes are wide open. He's saying, yeah, I'll take that $7,000. But they're not a township advisory committee. They're an independent 501c3.
By all means, I mean, the chairman himself, he works very hard. There's no
Yeah.
questioning that.
This is
He's
definitely
valuable for the town. I mean,
Yeah, and I agree.
he's dedicated for years, but
This is
it has
not an
nothing to do with
indictment of
personal.
Joe. This is,
Yeah.
he does it, I started with that. He does yeoman's work. He does a
Doing
great
it for
job,
years,
puts an
yeah.
incredible effort. I hope this doesn't disappoint him. But I don't know how we do that. So,
Yep.
what do we need to do here? Just change that number to make it 85?
If that's what you're,
Do we want to do that? Make that 85, add that $1,000 in as we step up the minimum wage, step up to minimum wage as appropriate. But I'll reach out to Joe and see.
I think that'd be a good idea,
You know,
just to make sure,
I mean,
because
you know,
we still support him, and
Yeah,
I mean, it's great work, we just,
This is
Probably
this has
shouldn't hear
nothing
that.
to do with Joe or what he does. This is
you probably shouldn't hear that.
what it is.
Grapevine.
Yeah. So all these changes that are on here, we took that out of there. We still need senior citizens, the second program. Are we sufficiently funded for these programs that we're doing? We're okay, there's no issue with that. Okay. Anybody have any other specific line item questions?
Yeah, Jeff, I knew there was something in there, Jerry mentioned more staff, is that, Jerry requested more staff, I know the mayor didn't put it in his budget request, is that?
All right, he
Something
put
we're
it,
looking at, or?
Jerry requested it in writing, but really didn't touch base on it with the meeting with the mayor.
Okay, so it's not.
The mayor did not provide for it. Correct.
Okay.
Are there any other issues with specifics before we get to the big picture stuff? So, Jeff has explained in his memo where we stand and what would be a potential increase in order to make up the difference from where we are currently and where we would need to be without. I think that we can, again, for those folks that are watching, we also use the surplus as a stabilizing factor in this, and what Jeff has laid out, and this is all about balance. This is all about trying to keep the budget from maintaining or increasing rather than decreasing, and it tends to have kind of its own life. If it starts decreasing, it tends to feed upon itself in a downward spiral. So Jeff, in his usual conservative way, has indicated what it would be to utilize. This would be you suggested 3.8 cents would be utilizing the same amount of
So
surplus?
what I gave you for a starting point was that if you were to basically have your revenues similar numbers as last year and utilize the same amount of fund balance that you used last year, you'd be at 3.8 cents. I recognize that probably isn't where you're going to end up because you generated more fund balance at year end than you had the previous year. So, I understand that, but this is just to give you a frame of reference of where you stand right now, is with the spending, the appropriations end of the budget, and utilizing basically the revenues from last year and the same level of fund balance last year, you would be at 3.8 cents. So the balancing act that you have to undertake is to make sure that if you're going to apply more fund balance as to approximately where you're going to be at year end. If you did this, you would be at about 9 million, which is about 200,000 less than where we're at this year. And again, these are estimates because things change during the course of the year, whether it be the rate of collections or whether it be if we had some new construction that we knew was coming, would impact it somewhat. But most of the revenues, state aid is going to be flat. And that's one of the reasons that we sort of really paid attention over the last 10 years of managing the fund balance is when we give you the whole PowerPoint program that gets used for the public hearing on the budget. One of the things you're going to see in the graphs and charts is that state aid has not increased in over 20 years, probably even more than that. And in fact, it has gone down as a percentage of the budget, where it used to be over 20% of the budget, and now it's roughly, I think it's under 9% of the budget. You are balancing your budgets on taxpayers and your own fund balance. So if you don't manage your fund balance properly, you can That's one of the most important things that we try to do here to keep things on an even keel, because there's really no one that's going to come in and bail you out.
I mean, to Gary's point, for the residents, if we didn't balance this surplus or fund balance, right, and we didn't use that to help us out here, every year we'd be looking at least a 3.8 increase, right? I mean,
Well, if you figure you're using 3.7, you used $3.7 million to balance the budget last year. I mean, take a look at where that would be. It's
Yeah.
probably like 25 or 30% increase if you didn't have that to balance the budget.
Yeah, so this keeps us,
Correct.
keeps our increases
Right.
manageable, and I think that's what you guys have been trying to do before I got on, you know.
Right,
It's
you know,
the mission here, and that's the goal.
The word to underscore was always stability. You know, like anything, it always costs more. And to run any organization, especially a governmental organization like this township, you know, we know for sure that there's going to be increases in pension costs. We have been at, you know, frankly, at the request and sometimes demands of the residents, been aggressively paving roads in an effort to catch up and get into a situation where it's not, well, there's a, you know, we need a 20-year plan in order to catch up on these. And we've been doing that, but like anything else that comes with a cost. And we've been balancing that, and as we're going to permanent bonding, we're in a situation where it's going to increase our debt service for the roads that everybody wants to see their road paved, and we're happy to do that, but it costs money. So, you know, and the other side of that balance is, but we don't want to shock people with unconscionable rate increases, and I think we've been able to do that. You know, we have you know, everybody talks about the 2% cap. We were always so below that increase in anything. It's almost something that we don't even consider. I think if we were to use more of the fund, the surplus, and maybe go from, and not do 3.8 cents, but maybe half of that, maybe 2 cents. You know, 1.9, 2.1, something what would that be for the average home? 2%, let's say 2%, make round numbers.
2 cents?
2 cents.
About $42.
About $42. So frankly, less than $1 a week, and we would use more. How much more surplus would we have to use in order to do that?
About 280,000.
Okay, so
What's that number that you said 2? Gary, what was the
2 cents?
2? You said 1.9 or 2? Which one?
I asked Jeff for 2 cents because it's
Okay,
easier to
all
just
right.
deal with it in whole
Okay.
cents. So it's about, so figure that's about $42 for the average home. You know, the average home is,
211,000.
oh, look at you, having all the answers. So,
Nobody has the average homes.
yeah. So if you happen to hit that right on the pin, you're gonna be above it or below it. And
Somebody probably does.
you know, so if that home's taxes are what they are, you know, our increase should be, would be less than $1 a week. At $42 for the average home, obviously would be that way. You know, with other increases that we collect, people don't always understand that our part is, you know, I'm guessing, I'm not doing the math here, is 89 cents a week. But it is what it is. It's always the accumulated increases from other organizations as well as whatever we do. But that is, in my mind, still in the realm of stability. It's not something that is going to change people's ability to stay in Delran or come to Delran. In my opinion, it's not, you know, none of us are here to raise taxes. But we are stewards of the residents' money. We have to do this the right way. If we turn our head and say, no, we'll just stay at zero and just keep using that surplus, at some point, we're gonna say, oh, by the way, we have to raise taxes $400.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
That's a slippery slope.
We don't ever want to do that. And some of you have experience
Yes.
in that,
Seeing budgets and analyzing budgets, and when they get reviewed by our folks, sometimes the comment comes up, they have a poor trend of keep robbing from the surplus, and it's not a healthy situation. So it is good to maintain a healthy surplus.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, Gary, ultimately, no one here wants to raise taxes, but the cost of doing business goes up every year, pensions and salaries and electricity, and, I mean, it's just the way the world, nothing gets cheaper, and ultimately, we have to balance the budget.
Right.
And I don't think, by any means, this proposed budget is frivolous spending at all, we're not
Right.
doing anything crazy, so I think, there's not much we can cut out. In a
Right.
very tight budget, I think it's, we have to do what we have to do.
A couple of years ago, when we first came in, we did some, Jeff and the mayor did some serious cutting, and we were able to lower taxes a couple of times. It was unheard of, but it happened, and we were at zeros quite a bit. And we were finding ways to do things better. And, we're in a, I don't know, Jeff, you have a lot more years here. We're in a pretty darn good financial position.
I mean, 2 cents isn't, you're still going to leave yourself in a good financial position for next year. It's not going to reproduce all of the fund balance that you have this year, more than likely, but you'd still be in a strong position. The budget is a maintenance budget. There's really not a new program in there. In terms of dollars and cents, we do have some rather significant increases that you have no control over, and specifically pensions, debt service, again, for roads, road construction. If you take a look at one of the departments, Public Works, operates with 14 men. I challenge any other town to run their Public Works department for 17,000 population town with 14 men. It doesn't happen. So there's not a lot of frivolous spending at all. There's no frivolous spending in here, but it's tight.
Yeah.
I like that word, maintenance budget, that's a good.
And there's a lot of stuff that people see that has gone on, like roads, and there's a lot of things that happen that people don't see, like the roof over our head. That wasn't inexpensive, and nobody sees it. Nobody knows the difference other than it's not leaking anymore on all of our stuff. Knock wood, yeah, I know. I heard it coming out, and I went, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But the bottom line is we're still maintaining the township and the infrastructure. We're still, doing what we're doing, and it's the unfortunate part of what we have to do. And I would remind everybody, not at this table because you all know, but that we all pay the same taxes that every other resident pays based on the value of our home. So it's not, if we have to increase taxes, we're increasing them on ourselves as well. And nobody's in the spot where we can say, that doesn't matter. It always matters. Anybody else?
Just in looking at everything, I hear what everybody's saying, and I agree, and it's interesting that as we've gone through this budget, and Jeff, thank you for doing all this work, I don't see anything that I could recommend to cut. So, with that in mind, if we look at the numbers Jeff has given us, where we have options to either raise taxes at 3.8 cents increase, which is about $80 to each household. That's obviously, I think, an event we all wish to avoid. But then the other end of the spectrum is to say, take all of it out of the surplus, and Tom, I agree, that would leave us with lesser of a margin in surplus. And if our budget is 17 million plus per year, is that about right? 17,
Yes.
Over 17.5 million, right? So what percentage is 5 million of that? Jeff, do the math for me.
A little over 30, probably about 38%.
So that leaves us with a smaller margin in case of emergency, in case of event, in case we have to somehow.
Recognize that we are the collector of all of the taxes, and we have to provide, and I get this speech every time, so I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's a good speech.
But we have to collect over $52 million. As of last year, $52 million. The majority of it, 60-some% going to the school, and some going to the county, some going to the fire district, and we're roughly 20% of it. So we have to pay them their funds when they require it, and it's usually on, for the most part, on a monthly basis with the school. So sometimes, if we did not have this surplus, we could not make that payment. I can tell you, we wouldn't have been able to make the payments if we did not have that fund balance. So that's the other rationale for having a fund balance, is that because those taxes are coming due and you're collecting them, and you're just a small portion of it, you do have to have something in there to be able to provide for those other entities.
Let me interrupt you, and let me ask the question. I know the answer, but not everybody does. What happens if we don't have the money?
You'd have to borrow, usually tax anticipation notes. Basically, you're borrowing money to pay the other entities, and then you would be paying interest in order to get their payments to them. And we were, long story short, because I've been around for a while, we had a year where we had a big reduction in tax collections, and we didn't realize you don't realize whether all your collections are going to come in to the end of the year. You can kind of watch it as it goes along. But we recognized that we were going to have a couple of large taxpayers that were in a particular industry that were not doing well that year. And it was as a result, instead of collecting nearly 98%, we collected 93% of our taxes. That was well over $1 million that we were short. And fortunately, that year, the state came out with the extraordinary aid program. We went to Trenton and we got that taken care of. Otherwise, the taxpayers would have seen a very significant increase in taxes. They didn't, but it's one of the, and we would have had to deal, we almost had to deal with tax anticipation notes that year because we did not have enough funds to make the payment to the other entities. And if we got a little bit of assistance with them, and then when we got the extraordinary aid, we were back in a position where we could make the payment.
So with, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, I can go next.
Sorry, Tim. So with what you had said there, Jeff, what I'm reading and what I'm hearing is it would be irresponsible to not have some kind of increase, to basically make sure that we don't have that occasion occur that you just described, and in order to keep us in pace with what is happening now with the budget, which includes the pensions and the roads we're trying to do. I mean, I don't want to raise taxes at all, of course, but if it's going to be irresponsible not to, that's what I'm getting. Is that accurate? Correct. Okay.
Tom?
Yeah, and I just, if there's tax appeals and we owe the money back to the taxpayer, do we get the money back from a portion from the school, the fire, and the other entities, or do we bear that whole burden?
It's all on us.
And I do know the answer to that,
It's
but I
all
just
on
wanted
us.
to bring that up because
Good
it
point.
does bother me. And in my soapbox, Jeff, which I've not been here for my soapbox, I would love that if everybody had the right to send a check to all those entities, and then possibly they would look at us as a very good value.
Yeah, boy, that's good. I like that too.
Well, I mean, I negotiate a lot of contracts,
No,
and I'm trying to get for certain individuals that are a small part of the budget, and, I think people have to look at each individual spot.
Yeah, Jeff just said it. Our part is approximately 20% of what you pay in taxes. So if you pay $8,000, so I'm just picking a number, that $1,600 goes to us. That provides trash, police, public works, snow removal, branches, leaves, all that from $1,600. So, I don't want that to be anything other than informational. That's what we do and what we do it with. So, people very often confuse who they write the check to as to who keeps the money. So even though you pay Delran Township with your tax bill, or your mortgage company does, we get and give to other people 80% of that, so. All right, so does it sound like something that we can deal with at 2% or 2 cents, not 2%, but 2 cents? And 2 cents would be at 42, that's about 0.5% of their total taxes. It's getting a little deep in the weeds, you know me, I like playing, crunching numbers. Yeah, it's too much. But it's certainly within our cap, I would say that. Yeah, it's maybe a quarter of what we're restricted to. So we will put this on the public agenda, and we have that would be our public meeting on the budget.
That would be the introduction. And for those of you who haven't been through the introduction is basically just reading by title. I mean, the auditors and I and the finance officer have a lot of work to do between now and Tuesday to get that, but that's not kind of the dog and pony show. That the public hearing in May 7th, I think it's May 7th, when you have your public hearing, yeah, May 7th. That's when you would actually have a public hearing on it. Introduction is just reading it by title. You don't usually take comments on it. We do like a 1 paragraph. This is what's in the budget. This is how much. This is the increase. And then we'll do a lot of work between now and then to put out basically we hand out a PowerPoint program and kind of give all of the detailed information that all of you will get to see and take a look at before it hits the public.
Right. It'll be fully explained. Jeff does a great job with charts and graphs that say this is where it's going, this is what it's been, this is how it's trended, and you know we're balanced every year. Just no getting around that. We have to do that. So you know, let me say thanks to the mayor for putting this together. Thanks to Jeff and all the department heads for all the work that they did to get us to this point, and thanks to council for spending the wonderful countless hours reading through this bit of information. And keep these for the next time capsule. So there wouldn't be room. Okay.
There's one additional aspect of the budget we have to touch base on, and that's the capital.
Correct.
The capital is only a spending plan. It does not spend money. You should have those items outlined in the capital budget, and quite frankly, it's a summary. It'll say public works equipment, for instance, $150,000. It won't spell them out. It'll say streets and roads, which you've already done, so you don't need to have that in there, you know, $1 million or whatever. It does not provide you with any spending authority, us with any spending authority. The next step after the budget's adopted, if you want to spend those funds, would be to do an ordinance that authorizes that spending. So in essence, it is just, they don't like to say it's a wish list, but it's exactly what it is. It is a wish list for the year, but it does sort of outline some items that that you're interested in, that the different departments are interested in, and you have in the capital section some of those items that are spelled out. The mayor, I think, made some checks on some of the items that he was interested in, but ultimately he leaves it to council because he recognizes that council's going to do the ordinances to authorize them. But I can go over them real quickly. And one is for the court office, and we're looking at more extensive than this, just court office, because we've been asked by council to, or council people to take a look at providing the courtroom and this room with some TVs for presentations that would be useful for the planning board, zoning board. We'll come back to you with an estimate of what that is. But the court system also has proposed for a presentation where they basically have we already actually have it in there, but it's an updated program for presenting the video arraignments. So they used to, years ago, bring the prisoners over, and we had to transport them to the township. That hasn't happened in years. We used to have to buy them lunch at McDonald's, all kinds of stuff.
And it would replace the giant TV box that blocks Jeff's view from all the residents and the residents from seeing Jeff.
I think Jeff's gonna leave it there.
But, you know,
See if we can get a bigger one and put it right there.
right in front of Jeff.
Projector curtain.
Public Works, and I don't know how much in depth you want to go on these, because most of these are items that we think that you need, and quite frankly, the only thing we would need to do is, for now, is to put them in there. If you see anything that you absolutely say, okay, I don't want it in there, and again, it's going to be a summary, then we would remove them, but most of these items, we would recommend be included, and again, in summary form, and then during the course of the year, you would, at that point in time, make a determination whether or not you want to go forward. We bring it to you at a work session agenda again and say, you know, we want to consider purchasing this truck or this copy machine or something along those lines. And then,
Right, so let me, just so that we have the big picture in front of us, so, I'm trying to remember how this is only my 11th budget. How do we include the capital budget as a summary number when we introduce the budget, or is?
Yeah, it'll be a page for, it'll just say something like Public Works equipment, and we kind of look at that, both short and long term. There'll be a 1 year and there'll be a 3-year number in there, and we just have kind of general numbers of what we think it'll be for 3 years, just like when you've been doing construction on roads. We'll put in there an estimate of say, $1 million a year. I mean, we didn't used to put that high a number in.
Right, I
But
remember.
you've been spending about $1 million lately. It used to be about 400,000, then it went up to 800,000, but we would, since it's been about $1 million, we would put that in there. That's going to be roughly $1 million a year. Maintenance on the building might be, $150,000 a year for different items. Public Works, and then there'll be a 1 year and a 3 year, and it'll just be a summary. It won't spell out the individual item being purchased. The background is clear. We'll add these items up. Essentially, that'll be the number we back into, and then somewhere during the course of the year, usually after we adopt the budget, we'll bring those items up that are most in need of action right then and there to take place, and say, okay, do you want to authorize these items, have that discussion, and if you say yes, then you authorize me to contact the bond attorney and put together a bond to put together for the purchase.
Let me ask you a question that I know the answer, but I like your explanation better than mine. For the folks that are doing these budgets for the first year, we have to have a certain amount of money in the budget for down payment.
All right, you need a 5% down payment. It's called Capital Improvement Fund. And that's one of the few funds that when you budget for it, if you don't spend it, it stays in there. We have Capital Improvement Fund money that's still in the budget, and we have an appropriation in this year again to continue on with that. And one of the reasons we want some balance in there is for the purposes that you did this year, is that you have, for the last probably 3 years, you've been authorizing your road project prior to adoption of the budget in order to